Hi everyone, welcome back to GameMaker Cast. It's Mickey, and in today's video, we're going to be working on Phase 1 of the boss. So let's roll the introduction and get right into it. I'm going to start off by opening up the boss object, and I want to open up the crate, step, draw, and the collision event, and maximize everything. In the previous episode, we worked on the introduction, so let's go ahead and write the case statement for Phase 1. For this particular phase, we want the boss to move left and right, so I'm going to be using a new variable called position next x. This is going to come from the create event, and you can see here at the bottom, we have our structure for the position and the next variables for x and y. Back in the step event, we're setting the next position for x to the current position, and that's because in Phase 1, what we're going to do is check the position that we currently are versus the next position, and if they are equal, we want to randomly choose a next position. We will use the random range function between 96 and the width of our room. Now that we have the next position, let's use the approach script and let's move towards that X position by 3 pixels each frame. To add a little bit of juice, we'll also change the image angle based on our direction. Now I should be able to run my game, and the boss is going to have an introduction phase, and when they get to Phase 1, they should move left and right randomly. Now it's time to add some shooting. What we're going to be using is some timers. I already have the timer set up in the create event. You can see that we have one for shooting that has a current value and a maximum value. Back in the step event, what we want to do is check to see if the current value is less or equal to 0. If the current value is less or equal to 0, that means that we're able to shoot. And what we want to do is choose a random shot between the wait state, single state, and double shot. We can middle click on the boss shoot state to figure out all the different shots that we're able to take. Back in the step event, the other thing that we want to do after we choose the shooting state is to reset our timer. Now, if our current shot is something bigger than 0, then we want to ensure that the shooting state is set to wait, and we're going to take 1 off the current timer. Now, this is a new state machine that we haven't coded before, so let's go to the bottom of our file and let's create a new switch statement based off of the shooting state. The very first shooting state is pretty easy. We're going to code the wait state, and it's going to do nothing. For the single shot, let's code this so that we instantiate a single bullet at the X and Y location of our boss, adding 32 pixels to push it down. Next, we need to find our current player and check to see if that player does not equal no one, meaning that our player is still alive. If our player is still alive, we'll change the direction to point at our player. And let's also add some sound in here so that we can continue on. Now for the double shot, it's going to be very similar to the single shot, except what we want to do is instantiate 2 bullets and then just opposite them left and right based on the sprite's width. Once again, we need to find the player and we need to ensure that the player is alive. And then we can set up both bullets to point in the direction of that player. And just like before, we want to play our sound. Now we can't run our game just yet. We have to open up the enemy bullet. Let's open up the create event and the step event. In the create event, we want to have 3 variables. We'll set the direction to point down, which is 270 degrees, and later on we're going to be using a timer wait and image alpha, so we'll set that up now. In the step event, we want to make sure that if our timer is bigger than 0, then we take 1 tick away from that timer and continue to keep the image alpha at 0. This will make our bullet invisible, and like I said, we'll be using this later on. In the opposite statement, what we want to do is we want to set our speed to 12, and then we want to ensure our image alpha will reach an opacity of 1. We can do this using the lerp command, which will change the value over time. Finally, for memory purposes, let's ensure that we clean up any bullets that go outside of the room. Now let's run our game again and let our boss shoot at us a few times. So right now, there's no way for our boss to hurt us. Let's switch back to the boss object and make sure that we are in the bullet player collision event. We want to make sure that we can only damage the boss if they are not in the introduction phase or the dying phase. This means that they're in one of the 3 phases and we can take 1 away from the current hit points. By the way, these hit points are already created in the create event. If we scroll up, you can see that we are using a structure that has a maximum and current hit points. Because we are damaging our boss, let's also choose a random sound to play, and we want to remove the bullet that has hit our boss. The only other thing I want to do is go into the step event, and let's go all the way up to the top so we're in the boss state, which is the movement state, and underneath phase 1 we want to see if we don't have any hit points left, meaning that the current hit points is less or equal to 0. And if that is the case, let's change the movement state to phase 2. And now that we're able to hurt the boss, we need some way to draw the health bar. In the draw event, we want to ensure that the health bar is only going to be drawn if we are not in the introduction and not in the boss dying state. If we are, let's just do an early exit so that the sprite is just drawn. We also need two variables to keep track of the foreground color and the background color for us. Now I'm going to be using a color trick for later on where we change to different states, which will mean different foreground and background colors. But right now, let's just use a switch statement, and we're going to switch based on the movement state. Remember, this movement state is things like phase 1, phase 2, and 3. So for phase 1, what I will do is I will use the foreground color and background color of these two hex colors. And for phase 2, I'm just going to code this in so that we have different foreground and background colors, and you can see the trick that we're going to use. I will leave phase 3 out, and the final thing we need to do is draw the health bar at the X and Y location of our boss, and then we can use the current hit points and maximum hit points to get the amount that needs to be drawn. Now let's run our game and see if we have some health that we can deduct and some hit points. And so I will end the video at this. We're set up for phase 2, and that will be in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Thank you all for watching the video. It was made possible by support of viewers like you. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon site for more tutorials. A special shout out to a few members in no particular order: Victor, GameMaker Community, Paul, Robert, Mary, Ashby, and Jerica. Once again, thank you all so much for the support. I'll see you in the next video.